Amazing. So I don't know if we have any question before Florencia leaves. You're having a lot of clappings, a lot of
Yes.
awesome jobs,
Thank
very
you.
nice,
Thank you. Thank you,
and
everyone.
so on.
Okay. So, well, maybe if we don't have any question, maybe someone needs to, I don't know, make a break or something.
Yes. Before we go to the next session, I think that Juan is not here yet.
Okay.
So I don't know, Rice, if you agree, let's take like 10 minutes of break and
Yes, look,
we
it's a
wait for
long day
Juan to.
today. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
long day today. So let's take a bit of a break. Let everyone get a rest. A lot to take in. Before our next session begins in 10 minutes. Thank you once again, Maria. That was very, very,
My
you know,
pleasure.
yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you,
Thank
Florencia.
you.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
joining us. Okay. Okay, guys, as agreed with Mariano, we're going to take a break, 10-minute break, relax, and we'll be joined again in 10 minutes with none other than Yuan. I'm just going to check, though, because he was online, to be honest. Let me just check. Yuan, he was online. He's not anymore. So I'll chase him. I'll just reach out to Yuan so that he joins in 10 minutes. Unless you want to, Mariano.
Yeah, I'm going to send him a message.
Yeah,
He
cool.
said that if he was in a meeting, then he's going to
Oh,
connect
no
shortly.
worries.
So,
Tell him just as long as he joins in 10 minutes, that's fine. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, everyone, take a break. See you in 10 minutes. Thank you. Hello. Okay, we're back.
We're back. Juan is here.
Hello, guys.
Hey. Juan is online.
I was jumping between meetings, so busy day.
Well, Juan, we don't blame you for having a day job, right? you got to pay the bills, right? we got to pay the bills.
Exactly.
You got to work, right?
So how is it going so far?
Oh my word, Mariano. I think really, really good insight. I think from a questions and answers perspective, it seems just from my own personal opinion, I usually use that as a measure of how the attendees are responding. It feels right now that this is all new to them, right? It feels that a lot of these are new concepts that they're learning. Because usually what we find on other boot camps is they have some exposure to this technology, and they then build upon, okay, I've got these questions because I've tried this, I've tried that, it's not working. We're not getting that so far on this boot camp, which indicates to us that the vast majority of attendees online this is new to them, and they're just trying to download this into their brain, which is fantastic because that's what we want. Yeah. We want to build and grow the community of supply chain, don't we? Juan and Mariano, you published your book to address this, so if you don't mind, Mariano and Juan, if you could just post the link to your book again before we begin the next session, for people who want to keep on track with their learning, feel free to do so. But Juan, so I've just been checking the questions, Q&A, and yeah. So yeah, nothing outstanding at the moment. So what we can do is I think we can proceed now with your session, Juan. Yeah, take it away.
Thank you very much. So let me quickly share my screen. Let me get this organized 1 second, please.
And whilst
Okay.
Mariano is Juan is doing that, please feel free to ask any questions. If some of this information is going above your head, that's fine. You know, everyone's here to learn. If you ask a question, then maybe there's at least 10 other people that also have the same question in their mind. So feel free to ask it in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay, guys. So Juan, we can see your screen. So yeah, the show is yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. So hopefully you are enjoying the sessions today. It was prepared with a lot of effort, as Raz and Mariano said. It's required some preparation, some time, and it's very nice to have you here online today to learn a little bit more about Dynamics 365 supply chain management. So we have kind of 45 minutes or 1 hour, less than 1 hour to talk about today procurement and sourcing, and then we are going to talk a little bit about landed cost. So my name is Juan Bravo. I'm Microsoft MVP. I'm solution architect in HSO International. As Raz said and mentioned during the day, last year in 2023, we decided to write a book together with Mariano about how to become a supply chain management consultant. So this is a very interesting compile of the learnings or experience we had together implementing the module, and as well preparing yourself for the certification in the supply chain management. And hopefully you can go through that material. We took a lot of effort to get there. We built something like more than 400 pages of knowledge that bring a lot of more clarity how to get onboarded into the technology. So if you have the possibility, go through that. It's a very nice material and is now part of the Microsoft official training material in the Microsoft store, in the Microsoft library in Redmond as well. So let's talk a little bit about the the process first before we get into the system. So when we talk about the procurement and sourcing, we need to first start learning what is the source to pay journey. So in this picture, we have more or less all the processes, and in this red line you have in the screen is the main source to pay process that they required, or we're gonna cover using different part of the system. Will help us to cover the business needs first. So the main concept behind is to have the proper capabilities to develop a procurement and sources strategy, manage the relationship with the suppliers, source and contract goods and as well services, and of course do the procurement of these goods and services. In some parallel process that maybe is not fully part of the process that is part of the procurement module will be to manage the accounts payable, and as well analyze the procurement and sourcing result or see the reports behind the scenes. So that's the key. And if we go a little bit into the sub-process and the details behind, so when we talk about the procurement and sources strategy, we can develop procurement catalogs, we can develop supplier segments, we can develop policies for our vendors, or how do or spend strategy or analyze the sourcing market. And as well, we can define accounts payable policies. So this is one of the features that we will see later on. So one example that I will want to show you is how we can develop this procurement catalog, or how Dynamics can integrate with external vendor catalogs. So this is one of the features we have available in the supply chain management model. So, and one of the key elements that we need to do, of course, is to manage the supply relationships. This is something that we are going to discover. And at the end of the session, as I will show you what is coming in 2025 in July. So because we will have new tools that will be more fully connected with our actual vendor collaboration platform, but we can discover supplier, onboard new suppliers, evaluate the performance, manage the risk suppliers. We are going to see how we can manage the risk in the supply chain as well, so we can manage the active suppliers in a proper way. So vendors management is one of the key elements that we need to consider part of as a pillar of the supply chain management model. Of course, we can manage contracts to get goods and services, and one of the important things that we are going to focus today is how to raise purchase quotations, how to we can issue purchase orders, that which is, we'll say, all of you will believe that is the main functionality of the procurement module. Yes, of course. But as well, we need to understand we have more surroundings functionalities, like to do the proper return to the suppliers, consolidate requisitions, manage the purchase orders, and analyze the purchase plan, of course. And then something that maybe we are not going to see fully today is how we are going to process the supply invoices, how we are going to see all that is related to the payment of our vendors. But we are going to touch base into the payment terms and more details that are part of the parameters. And of course, we have some statistics, we have some very nice reports, some BIs embedded into the Dynamics to analyze in an effective manner how we are managing our business. When we talk about the capabilities, so let me go one level. And when we talk about the scenarios, the two things we can do, as we mentioned before, is to get materials or service acquired into Dynamics. We talk about direct materials and indirect materials. So when we talk about direct materials, we talk about raw materials to use in productions, finished goods to distribution or for resales, or packaging materials that we need for the products. And when we talk about indirect materials, we talk about office suppliers, computers, technology, safety equipment, or fixed asset. So that's the type of materials that we can buy, we can acquire with the procurement module, and we can integrate in a proper manner with the system. In the service part, we have another activities that the subcontracting work for a client project, engineering services for research and development, outsourced manufacturing services, or when we talk about services like IT support or legal consulting services, something that we can as well acquire using the Dynamics 365 supply chain management. What are the common changes or the challenges that we have in the source to pay process or in any company that is not using supply chain management? So usually we have limited visibility, we have a poor supply management, we have very difficult contract negotiations, we have integration issues, we have outdated technology, and we have a delay process invoicing. So these are the majority of the issues that we see in companies that are not using Dynamics 365. And the companies, what we tend to do is they work in silos and they have this lack of communication between other departments. So in Dynamics 365, the main advantage we have is that we have a fully integrated system that is with other modules, with other areas, with finance, with the production, with accounts payable, with master planning, with fixed asset. That are the part of the embedded capabilities we have in Dynamics 365 when we talk about a solid and robust ERP in the cloud. So we are going to talk about more in details now. So when we talk about more specific about Dynamics, we will see that from the process to the real activities we can do in the system, we can do purchase requisitions. So purchase requisition is the concept when somebody in any part of the company, any department, desire to buy something. Let's call it, maybe I'm sitting in the sales department and I want to acquire a new TV or a new computer for my department, so I can initiate a purchase requisition. So I want to buy a computer, I want to buy a TV, but I don't know the vendor, I don't know the price. So it's just a purchase requisition that we can initiate the process and then make it be part of the workflow, and then go through the full process to the approval to my manager, to the finance, the department, or the general manager in a company. And then this purchase requisition can go into the next step in the flow. That could be, let's start doing the purchase quotation. And let's see, now that we have a requisition approved, let's find the best vendor from where to buy. And this is one of the key things that some departments tend to ignore when we talk about the difference between just purchase something or do the real procurement work. And here is a little bit of difference. When we talk about a company that is doing procurement, they are following certain policies. They are trying to find the most economical vendor and the same quality to get the material, so to get the service into the business. As well, of course, the procurement also means that they do negotiation. They negotiate the better price. They negotiate the better payment terms and the shorted delivery time. So those are the things and the considerations that we need to take in account when we talk about purchase in Dynamics 365. We will see later these three main concepts when we talk about lead types, when we talk about price, and when we talk about description, quality, and do the full traceability of the process. And of course, later on, when we have these quotations received, approved, we can convert this purchase quotation, the best quotation that we have identified that is the best one for us to acquire, to transform this automatically into one purchase order. and do the full process, create the purchase order, generate the formal document that we're going to send to our vendor, and do the proper confirmation dates in the purchase order. Again, putting the full traceability, when this order is going to be received, when it's expected from us to be received, and then finalizing the process with the vendor invoice at the end of the day. If something goes wrong with this, what we have ordered, we can do the proper purchase return, starting from a purchase order and doing the purchase return without the need to start typing or rebuilding everything again. So we can capture this same purchase order and convert it back to one return directly, and ask the vendor to get the materials back and get our invoice reprocessed. Of course, one of the key elements when we talk about procurement, so we need two main things in the system to make it happen. One are the vendors, and second are the items and the price. These two things are very well orchestrated in Dynamics 365, and we, with these two elements properly configured and being part of our main master data, we can simplify and automate the process of creation of purchase order as well. If we need to have more complexity in how we source our material, we can, of course, with the capabilities of integration, define our own catalogs with the vendors and have the prices defined, the items, their own codes and pricing, and we can keep this information updated. Or we can connect to external vendor catalogs like, let's say, Amazon or something similar, to buy directly from them and get the prices in real time and to understand the available quantities that we can buy and we can purchase from them. Purchase rebates are a mechanism to organize and negotiate pricing and discount as well, but in a more structured way, in more longer period times, or when we reach certain amount purchase over certain period or certain quantity of an item, and we can get this financial transaction reverted in terms of pricing and discount with a vendor. So I will not talk about this today because maybe will require a little bit more of time, which is today a little bit limited. And we might need to require more additional session to talk about purchase rebate. Vendor collaboration is a portal that we can provide access to certain vendor to get access to our purchase orders, to get access to the invoices, to update the vendor data, like the bank account or other type of details. And we can simplify the interaction when we are talking about purchase requisitions, purchase quotations, and of course, during the purchase order process. So this is a very nice features that is fully integrated. And some of the new capabilities that we are going to have is we will going to have a new vendor relationship management portal that has been announced a few weeks ago by Microsoft that will enhance the capabilities with the power of the Power Apps and Power Page to make able to the vendors to have a better platform to collaborate with the company where Dynamics 365 is being implemented. Landed cost, when it's even a separate module of the procurement and sourcing module, is one of the elements that we should consider part of the process when we are sourcing materials from abroad, because it's really important to have proper tracking of our goods in real time, understand what are the real costs that we need to allocate to material, and make the proper ownership of the goods according to the mode of delivery as well. And of course, we have a lot of purchase reporting that we are going to see today. So those are the more key features that we're going to see today. I will go to the demo in a few minutes, but what we're going to see in more traditional flow will be we were going to start from purchase requisition. We will jump after we have this purchase requisition approved into a purchase quotation. And then this purchase quotation, after we have the proper filtering 2-3 purchase quotations, we will select what is the most convenient for us. We're going to transform this purchase quotation into a purchase order. Then the next process is, of course, receive the products or the services in the company. And after this, do the invoice to be processed by finance and finalize the process. So this is more traditional. But we need to understand as well what are the two flavors of how to do this. So the first one is what we have in the top line. That is what we have seen during the process. That is, we go through the purchase order, we do the approval, the confirmation, and then we do, if would be the case that we require to do a prepayment, because the vendor requires a prepayment as a special payment condition, and then we do the proper item arrival and the product receipt. Second case, if when we talk about master planning, we create an order from the master planning, so MRP. MRP, we're going to look after the needs we have in sales, what we have in production, what we have in transfer orders, or what is required because we have safety stock or we have demand driver master planning behind certain setup. And we'll propose to buy a quantity of certain part of certain material. The step here is a little bit different because when we have certain demand required from the master planning, the only step we do is to firm this planned purchase orders and automatically get this purchase order converted into a purchase order immediately, and this order becomes automatically approved by the system. And then when this is approved, we can do the proper confirmation and send the confirmation, the purchase order to our vendor, and complete the process in the product receipt and do the item arrival. So, and then of course, at the end of the day, we're going to have the final step will be for both case, the vendor invoice, the matching that we can do, two-way matching or three-way matching, and then finally the payment. What is two-way matching or three-way matching? Maybe you have heard this process, but this refers to the three-way matching refers to what we have received in the stock. The prices are correct and the quantities match what we have ordered from our vendor. Two-way matching is just about the price and the quantity. That's it, the totals, but not looking after if the goods were received in stock or not. So that are the main concept, and we can override this setup and do this kind of parameters, let's say, using a dedicated matching policy by item and vendor, by item or just by vendor. So this is something that we can define and do very specific rules when we do this configuration in the system for specific vendors, specific vendor items, or both of them. So we can personalize this configuration as much as required, and this is one of the key tips that maybe we need to take in account, because otherwise we'll create complications when we work in the system in a more dedicated pace. So let me switch a little bit to Dynamics now that we have some concept in our mind. So first things that we want to see in Dynamics is the procurement and sourcing module. So as you have seen before, in the left section, we have all the modules, and then the module what we are talking about today is procurement and sourcing. So there are a lot of info or two big menu items with a lot of features and functionalities, but today we are going to explain a little bit what we have in. So at the first glance, one of the key elements we should always consider when we jump into a module in Dynamics 365 are the workspaces. So we have three main workspaces that can give us a 360-degree view of what is happening in our module. So that is the best way to start making an intro in what we need to do. So one of the first workspace we have is the purchase order preparation. So one of the most simplistic way to split the work and the effort required to organize the day-to-day life is by buyer group. So buyer group are kind of segments that we can define. We are going to have a group dedicated to buy just electronic, and then we are going to have a second buyer group that is going to buy something more specific, like maybe something non-electronic, or maybe it's plastics or some steel parts that we can use in a company or in a factory. Or we can segment. I have seen this, that in some companies, this buyer group is defined by name, with the particular name of the procurement person that is taking care of certain elements. That is also a possibility. But here we have more or less all the status, what we have, what is happening with all orders. So let's assume I'm the buyer group 10. And from here I can see my orders that are in draft, what I have in review, if I have some orders to take in review, or what order are assigned to me to take care, what are the purchase orders approved. So I can start everything from one workspace here, and have these tiles with the proper good and counting to simplify what is happening. Maybe I have to do these two orders are in review and I need to approve it. So from here, I can quickly jump into the order and start making certain actions. Other main things that we have here today is what we have mentioned, the vendors. We have all the vendors management that we can do. We have different menu items for this. We have the catalogs. We haven't commented. We have these vendor catalogs we can create, or external catalogs we can start creating to define what we have here. So I can start maybe defining something for this, and I define this to here. And maybe I don't have Amazon created here as a vendor, but I will select one. And then I can start defining the catalog, and then I can define the format for this vendor catalog. That will be CXML. Let me close this a little bit. So this is more or less what you are going to see when you define this format. So you will basically doing kind of a API call to an external part with certain identity or certain domain to capture all what is available in this external vendor catalog. So I have made this setup before with the Amazon account. I don't have the credential enabled today, but this is kind of standard format or layout to be defined with the vendors to enable this vendor catalog integration. This is one of the features that is very nice to explore when we have big vendors with a huge number of parts providing prices and updating frequently to us. The second main thing that we should take in account is that from here we can start doing the purchase requisition. What I mentioned before, the purchase requisition are the main process that we define when we talk about. And here I will do today Bootcamp demo. I can request this to be here on next Monday. And as well, a requisition can be linked or associated to one particular project. In this case, I don't want to do this today, but purchase requisitions don't necessarily need an item to be procured. The main thing that we should use here is to talk about procurement categories. So procurement categories is kind of a segmentation or a hierarchy we define with the things that we usually tend to buy in a company. let's say I want to buy today let's say some office machine. I will want to buy today a computer because I need a computer for my department. So I need a new HP computer. I need 2 because I have 2 new team members. And this I will put that will gonna cost a little bit around this amount. I can know it or not. This is not mandatory, but this is the information I have so far to my manager to approve this requisition. More details I can put here a reason. So a reason is something that is required because I need this for general supply, or is a renovation, or is a new team member. This is something I can put here in the description to new team members are joining the team. And from here, I can start making this, I would say, end-to-end interaction with my manager, with my vendor. And from here, I can save this. I have updated the reason. And then when I'm ready to make this prepared to my boss, and then I can send this and submit it for approval to my line manager or the person I decide to make it part of this process. So this can be configured. Please approve. And then I can send this to my vendor, to my manager to get this approved. Now, as you can see, the status will gonna change in review, and after my boss approve this will gonna be approved. And then this order can be converted into, I can move forward to the next step. But from here, start immediately, I can start a new request for quotation because I know what I need to do. So I just need to define here which one will gonna be the legal entity that will gonna buy this, and I can start making the requisition for this quotation. So, and then I will have immediately linked a new request for quotation create. So this should be part of the natural process. And in a different section here, we are going to see the new request for quotations. And you see that I didn't make any something special. So, but the document title will gonna be the same. And from here, I can start making this process to start requesting this to different vendors. And from here, then when I have all the prices in and all the details, I can automatically convert this into a purchase order. So this could be kind of more or less the logical flow that we can oversee here in the procurement part. And then, of course, we are going to see the most traditional one that will be the purchase order. So some of the companies sometimes decide to skip step number 1 and step number 2 because they know the vendor, they know the process, they don't require approval. They can go straight forward to the purchase order and define immediately what will gonna be the vendor that will gonna sell this part. So I will define this, that is English, because my vendor I know works mostly in English. I can define this is I need this for one specific site, so I can define this is for the main site, or define the warehouse where I need to receive this part of this goods, and then I can start creating the purchase order. So I will use this order as well for the next example I need to do about landed cost. So in this case, I am going to buy an item directly. So I will do something like this. I will select an item that is defaulted to be purchased. I don't have a price here, so I will select something like this one. Cost 6,000. And the most important thing I need to define in a purchase order is the dates. Dates are really important for the system, because based on dates, we can start making a proper assessment for when this is going to be required. So I will say that this is requested to be here next week. And the mode of delivery will going to be by ocean. So, and delivery time will going to be export. So I'm going to define this, and then the traditional step here, I can define as well a workflow. Somebody need to approve this. But in this case, to make it more faster and effective for this demo, I'm going to confirm this order right away. So now that I have the purchase order confirmed, I can print this confirmation and start preparing this confirmation to be sent to my vendor. So I'm taking the risk to do this in real time, but I think it's more transparent for you to understand how more or less work this in Dynamics. What is the speed of response? This is a test environment. It's not a production environment. So you will see as well that it's working a little bit slow than usual. But the result is the same in a production environment. So in the meantime, one of the things that Russ mentioned at the beginning of the session is about business event. So when we work with purchase order, we can integrate as well business event. We have as well in the system something in the system administration that is called the business event here. So, and we have a full catalog of business events that we can interact with the system when something happens. So I think I have here purchase orders. I just made an action here in the purchase order confirm. You will see here, I have here one business event that is active and is connected here to the to the Power Automate. So few seconds ago, something happened behind the scenes. And just 1 minute ago, I moved certain data from F&O to Power Automate, asking to Dynamics when a business event happened, I was extracting certain data from the system this way. And then I was making an approval process in Dynamics. So if I check my email now, what I have here, so I have my email closed, but you see here that I have in my email now, I should have at least an approval that I should receive. So maybe it's not here. It should come in a second. I have a business event. So here I was, when I got a confirmation or when I have created a purchase order, I can request to Power Automate to search certain data. And from here, I can approve or reject certain action. Even could be a purchase requisition, could be a purchase order. I can approve here and approve it for demo. And from here, I can make the comment right away and send it back to Dynamics. So this is one of the capabilities as well we have with integration that require, as you may see here, basically 2 or 3 steps to get this done in Dynamics. So it's quite easy to connect to Dynamics, to the environment. And then we can do a lot of things with this data that we can retrieve from finance and operations. This as well can be extended with help of developer. We can move the fields that we want to take out when something happens in Dynamics, when we click a button, when we push something, we can send certain data out as a business event. So that is something that you may consider as well as one of the capabilities in Dynamics. And here we have the, coming back, the purchase order that we finally saw. Let me close this one. That we generate in the system. So we have all the details, our company, the purchase orders, the data when it's required, the delivery address, what is the vendor name, and the details that we require for to the vendor to provide us and in which date this is required. So this is one of the capabilities we have in Dynamics with purchase orders. One of the key concepts of the most fundamental concept is purchase orders. But as well, we have a lot of capabilities in regards to reports. So one of the reports that I most like here is the purchase and spend analysis, which is embedded into Dynamics as well, into a Power BI format that we can update and synchronize when we most require. So we can analyze our purchase by vendor. It's taking a few seconds to load. Yes, it's coming. And then in the meantime, I'm going to load here this one. So yeah, it's retrieving certain data, but here you can see that we can understand what is happening with our purchasing and spend analysis. What is the category that is spending the most? What are the vendors that we see are the key one, the top 10? What are the locations that are buying the most as well? And we can have a lot of analysis and spend analysis by time, or spend analysis by vendor. Let's say something that is more dedicated. And this is not fixed, so we can still go here and edit this analytics. And we can customize this report as well. So as like we do with a standard Power BI, we'll have all the data, the raw data here to work and manipulate these graphs, and as well to create our own visualizations of the data with the right layout. So this is one of the capabilities, and as well the supplier risk assessment. That is one of the most interesting in regards to performance as well. So we have a lot of capabilities in regard to reporting. So traditional report and as well embedded Power BI reports into the module as well. So here I want to check one specific legal entity. I want to take this one today, for example. So, and from here I will have my performance ranking, my performance OTIF analysis. That will be the worst, the best scenario, the best vendor, and deliver it on time delivery, in full delivery, on time in full delivery. So I can do a lot of analysis in regard to my vendors with the standard Dynamics 365. We don't need to build this report or start thinking that this is not part of the solution. This is fully embedded. We have the risk assessment as well. That is one of the key and most interesting report that's been delivered during last year. It's getting a little bit slow, but for now, I will park this for now. And I will come back in a second to the presentation to get a little bit of understanding on what we have in the landed cost. I think I have 10 minutes to go. So I will go a little bit quicker here. So landed cost, as I mentioned, is or supporting module to the procurement and purchase module to track what we buy from abroad in a more structured way. So the idea here, or what are the key features, is to have a proper improvement of the shipment with a complete financial and logistical control. So what happens when we buy something, let's say, from China or from Australia or from very far, and we buy this by using a C method? Usually take 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. And when we do buy using X work method, when we buy using X work, one of the typical issues is we are responsible to collect the goods. We are responsible to put that into a ship, manage that voyage through all the way to our warehouse, and then do the proper reception in inventory. And maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but when we buy X-Work, we are the company that is buying is taking full responsibility of the goods since the very beginning. And we are unable to track the components and the parts in a proper way. And as well, there are other financial issues around, like the invoicing of the transport, plus the invoicing for the custom duties in the source country or in the destination that are happen before the goods arrive into our warehouse. So that's one of the key concepts that we can see here in the landed cost, and as well to understand what's happening behind the scenes with the dates and with the delivery process. So let me jump again. So landed cost is a separate module that you might find it here, landed cost, that have a full dedicated menu, a full dedicated setup. But as well, as you have seen before in the, or maybe not, in the procurement and sourcing, when I created the last purchase order, I have here at the very end this purchase order. And you may see here if I move a little bit here to the right, I have here all the landed cost features as well. So, but I will not touch it from here. I will do it from a new from the module itself to understand how we can organize this order into a proper landed cost method. So I will do kind of separate if I still have time. I want to open here the purchase order because I want you to see the impact in the order, especially here. So we mentioned that the delivery requested receipt date for this will gonna be the 24th of January. So I will do something more sophisticated here. I will put this is 2025 February. I will want this for the 10th of March. So something more realistic. And I will create a new voyage to manage this. So this is the 365 Bootcamp. I will define a vessel. So vessel is a boat, is a ship. So I will select this one. I will define that my journey template will be from, let's say, from Shanghai to Long Beach. So that will be my template. My mode of delivery, as you have seen here, will be by ocean. I will not select yet the shipping company. And let's see what happened now. So I need to find a warehouse here. Something's not working. working. So, so I made a small change. There we go again. Oops, for some reason I'm not seeing the order, but I have a prepared scenario for this case. So I have a previous scenario that I connected with another purchase order. So in this case was the purchase order, this one. And the delivery date for this one was yesterday. Let's go to the landed cost module once again. Okay, so one of the key elements here is to understand what is going to happen with the date. So one of the first things that we define in the configuration is to understand the main activities that will going to happen during all the transportation activities. So main thing I want to highlight here, that the main date I want to define here is this be loaded in the source port on the 17th of March. So I was expecting here to be on the 18th of February, and I have no confirmed receipt date. So, but as I update this date here, you will see here that I have some predefined, I would say, lead times in terms of estimation for days. How long we're gonna take this to arrive to my local warehouse here. So, and now if I check my order here, so something that immediately going to happen here, I will have a confirmed receipt date for the 16th of April that match this date in the landed cost module. So that is one of the key features that I can start controlling since the very beginning when my process start in the sourcing port. And other main important thing is that I can start making estimations in the cost about the estimated cost that I can define for this process. So I can predefine that from this port, the custom that is duties will be this amount and the freight will gonna be this amount. And how we manage this? We manage this with something that we call in the landed cost module, the definition of auto cost. So as you can see here, I have predefined that when I use this shipping company and when I use this model of delivery from this port, that is Shanghai, China to Long Beach, USA, and I have during this period of day, the cost for the freight will be 220K. So this is the same estimation I have done here. And other costs I have associated here for the duty, and I can say this will be for the shipping container or for the folio specific or for one purchase order. I can predefine another cost here. So I can define here different type of cost, maybe fuel, labels, local transporting. I can define here a predefined amount or based on weight or volumetric volumes. But I can define here something that just we're gonna be starting beginning of this month. And I can say this will gonna cost 5K. And then this will be defaulted to when I use this shipping company, disregarding if I have a mode of delivery, if I have a type of specific shipping container, and then this will be very specific. So those are one of the key features. And if I go back to the presentation once again, I will share this presentation later with you because I have all the details here, but I'm not able to cover it today in terms of what means auto cost, what are the rules, and what is happening with the good in transit. Because one of the setups that we are going to have when we use the landed cost module is a good in transit warehouse to allocate these goods in a proper way. So we can do proper receipt at the beginning, very beginning. We can recognize this in inventory. We don't need to purchase again. We will not get a new demand required to be acquired because we already will have this visibility in the inventory that we have this good in good in transit. And of course, we can manage this in a proper way. So here in this presentation, I was trying to explain all the steps to do this configuration and how we can manage this voyage in a proper way and how we can do the proper tracking. So that's for today in a nutshell. So I would like to finally mention what is going to come this year for the procurement and sourcing module. That will be a new feature that is called Managed Supplier Relationship and Improved Collaboration. So this will be a Power Apps experience that we're going to integrate with Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management that will help us to manage strategic areas of the relationship with the vendors. That will be including the scheduling, the appointments, the tracking performance, suppliers reviews. So we'll be able to manage prospects that are not registered yet. So they will be able to onboard itself the prospect that want to become or making business with us. And as well, we are going to have a new Power Page portal that will be kind of this supplier relationship portal that will help us to do more transactional overview of what is happening around the supply chain management. You can see this information more in details in the release plans for 2025 in the wave 1. And this is going to be part of the new integration with the vendor collaboration portal that is already exists in Dynamics 365. Last but not least, I would like to thank our sponsor today for having us and being capable to present this today. And handing back over to you, Mariano, or us for final question round if we still have time.
You on? Okay, let's have a quick look to see if we can answer some questions in the chat. Okay, can't see any questions in the Q&A. Let's have a quick look in the chat. Okay, yes, we have a few questions here. So the question is, price is okay. Okay, someone's okay. These questions are not correct. Price is missing. MJ. Okay, MJ mentioned price is missing. I think that's in relation to a comment during your presentation. I think when you asked a question, Juan. So that's fine. Okay, can't see any other questions. So Juan, we're on the hour now. So just a reminder to everyone that Juan and Mariano are not only the authors of the Dynamics 365 Supply Chain, becoming a supply chain consultant handbook. So you can carry on your learning. Also, they are both leading the community in supply chain, so please connect with them. So Juan, Mariano, don't forget to please leave your connection details in the chat so that the community can carry on their learning, okay? Because there are very few people in the community that are regularly sharing information and updates related to supply chain, apart from yourselves and a few others. So if you could do so, that would be great. So yeah, Juan and Mariano, if you could just share your contact details in the chat so that the community can stay in touch with you. And Mariano, we're going to thank you once again, Juan. Thank you again for joining us today and sharing your knowledge. And Mariano, shall we introduce the next speaker? Lewis. Lewis is online. Fantastic, Lewis. So Lewis is online. Hello, Lewis.
How are you today?
Hey, fantastic. So Lewis.
Hi, Luis.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Lewis, are you joining us from Portugal, or are you somewhere else in the world today?
Today I'm in Portugal, yes. Not usual, but today I am, and I'm calling you from Porto, a northern city of Portugal.
Excellent, excellent. So I know you've been busy traveling around the world, implementing supply chain solutions throughout the world. So it's great to have you here today, to be able to present and share your knowledge and to help grow the community in this realm, this very, very niche realm, very, very specialized realm. So without further ado, Lewis, we would like to hand over to yourself.
For sure. Thank you. And of course, it's a pleasure for me to be part of this community and to contribute with my humble part in this great, let's call it niche, like you said, of enthusiasts about business solutions, and specifically the ones that revolve around D365 and supply chain, which is also my preferred area and where I have dedicated most of my career so far. And today I will be bringing you a niche within the niche, let's say, which is order management and how can D365 help us on that regard. You should be seeing my screen now, hopefully, with my first slide. So going straight to starting the presentation. So today I bring you a bit about, it's still for most of the community considered a novelty, although it's not that new, to be honest, but it's still fairly unknown for a great part of the community. So I keep getting some interest from my colleagues and my contacts about intelligent order management, indeed the application that I would like to talk about today. As this is a niche, like I said, within the niche, and a very specific solution, which at the end of the day, it's an order management utility that can help us in a number of interesting business scenarios. So today I will just show you a little bit about what the solution is from a conceptual perspective, and then a bit of a tour around how it works for your interest. And of course, if you have any questions, please make sure you write them in the Q&A section, and I'm pleased to respond to them if I can. So just to understand who is here today, if you want to kindly scan the QR code and just let me know if you have ever heard about IOM or what kind of experience have you had with it. Just a bit of a curiosity, although typically the answer is the same, which is most people are not familiar, or if they have heard it, it was in a very superficial manner, let's call it. IOM, at the end of the day, it's like I said, an order management system and an order management solution, and that means that it's a system dedicated to orchestrate the flow of the life cycle of a given sales order. It's typically useful for retailers, digital retailers, but actually can operate equally fine in B2B interactions, okay? So it feels like most people are annoyed about another nomenclature they need to learn about it, or some have briefly heard about it, but no experts, it seems, about IOM, which facilitates actually my demonstration. Thank you for that. So let's jump to what IOM is. So it's part of the Dynamics 365 community. It's still presented as something fairly new, although it's already here for some years now. And it's usually referred as a solution that is part of the supply chain overall portfolio of Microsoft. And although technically does not is not part of the F&O supply chain, which we just saw from Mariano. It connects very nicely with that stack and extends it further into additional features that it provides. So first things first, why would the company need an order management system, especially when they might have a perfectly capable ERP like D365 F&O? Essentially, what we understand is that companies that are exposed to, especially online commerce, tend to have a very complex structure of providers and fulfillment partners that revolve around the operations in the areas where they where they develop their business, and that means typically a huge amount of interactions, of technical integrations with these stakeholders that create a set of, let's say, a visible footprint, both from a functional but most prominently technical footprint on the ERP, and externalizing those interactions into a system dedicated to that allows you to keep in the ERP what belongs to the ERP and have a more fit to purpose solution just to orchestrate and manage the life cycle of sales orders. Of course, that, like I said, this can be useful for B2B or B2C organizations and allows, let's say, for a more friendly manner of managing orders, allows for some flexibility about how do we specify the fulfillment strategy for these orders in a way that ERPs are usually too tight to sustain and does not impact or does not profoundly require you to change your, let's say, main supply chain processes, and gives you a nice space where you can create these fine-tuned rules about how do you fulfill orders in your business, okay? What business cases do we have for IOM? So typically this is used to connect ERPs and retail channels, okay? It's the obvious scenario. It helps sometimes to act as a middleware into managing, orchestrating, and harmonizing these orders before sharing the details about them to the ERP. They are also useful to make sure you can produce or perform your inventory allocation with, of course, on-hand inventory data available for that allocation process that is usually extracted from the ERP itself, but allows you to remotely orchestrate that inventory and reserve it accordingly to the order needs. It's also useful to provide customer service, and it's interesting to understand that as IOM is built on top of Dataverse, can rely on entities that are already part of the sales world, like accounts, like customers, and this can be useful for you to have a more 360 management perspective about your customers. It's also, of course, a huge use case is to make sure that the external fulfillment connection to your external warehouses or to delivery partners is made through IOM, again, because due to its nature of being an integratable solution. And this allows you to easily connect to these instances, okay? There is, of course, a number of other scenarios which are interesting, and as we go through the presentation and demonstration, I will tell you also a bit of our experience deploying IOM. From a technological standpoint, IOM is, for all intents and purposes, a model-driven Power App, okay, managed and built and published by Microsoft, that can be deployed in a completely standalone fashion or directly connected to the 365 F&O if that is the ERP that we wish to connect to. It's essentially a bridge between, like I said, order channels. These might be e-commerce, commerce, mobile apps, marketplaces, or CRM solutions. And it connects those systems to fulfillment and delivery providers, okay? These providers are also a concept that exists in IOM itself. So they are essentially a wrap that contain several APIs available, and essentially this generates actions for IOM to execute specific business logic that you configure. An example of that is if we have a provider which is a marketplace like Amazon or any other, and you specify an action and you code an action through Power Automate. That is, for instance, new sales order, which is the business event you want to capture. You can take that action to immediately create a flow, an orchestration flow on IOM about what do you plan to do based on that trigger. This might mean the process of identifying inventory and perform an inventory reservation. This might be the process of selecting and identifying a delivery partner that you plan to be the fulfillment partner to deliver the goods to your customer. This might be the trigger to generate a picking list to an external warehouse. There are many outputs that can be driven by these triggers and by these actions. IOM ships with several providers out of the box, some of them directly connected to the 365 applications, what Microsoft calls first-party providers. And then you can rely also on existing external third-party providers or develop your own, okay? So the process is conceptually relatively simple for the, let's say, the most obvious business scenarios. They revolve about e-commerce or retail channels to generate the creation of both customer accounts and orders. These orders are collected in IOM through the providers, like I mentioned. They initiate or they call a set of actions specified here, and these actions will lead to events of orchestration and fulfillment plan. Okay, IOM will then iterate, and this can be providing feedback to the original to the source of these orders, or process it forward into what are internal or external warehouses about instructions for picking, packing, and eventually shipping. That shipping usually involves the integration with a fulfillment partner, an LMV, and this can initiate a process of shipment creation, pickup request, and eventually the tracking of the order throughout the life cycle until it's finally delivered to the client, okay? So let's see a little bit about the application itself, and then we can get back to a few more concepts that you should be aware if you want to explore the solution. Okay, so here we have intelligent order management. Like I said, this is a model-driven Power App, okay? And if you are familiar to that concept, you can recognize it as such due to the, let's say, the UI elements of it. When you connect to IOM, you are presented with a homepage. Here you can check some of the latest videos that Microsoft published about how to configure IOM and some set of settings that you can explore, okay? Now, main concepts in IOM, and let's go first through the most obvious scenarios, and eventually we can see also some edge cases if you are interested on. So IOM is all about sales orders, right? And it's all about the sales order flow. So when you access the system, you are presented with several dashboards that essentially are embedded Power BI reports that are available through most of the, let's say, obvious entities in IOM, and that gives you a bit of an insight about how your sales order flow is going, how your performance is being captured both from an order intake, an order fulfillment, warehouse operations, and so on. This is interesting because, of course, it gives you much more visual perspective about your order pipeline, especially when compared about what traditional ERPs offer. Okay, so here you can check orders by different measures, like orders by different providers. What are the most hit areas of your order intake or your order destination? And there are all sorts of insights here that you can and should explore, okay? Of course, these reports are a starting point for this analysis. You can build your own measures and embed your own reports in IOM if you wish to extend it, okay? Now, of course, these dashboards are built based on data. That data is available in the, let's say, database engine that supports IOM, which being a Power App is Dataverse, okay? This data is collected through the integration of orders from the providers that you wish to connect to. And this gives you the possibility of transferring these orders into the solution, okay? If you are more connected to the concept of a sales order in an ERP, you will notice that, of course, an order in IOM is a bit more simplistic that typically you would consider it in an ERP, but also much more visual. So the one of the key points here is making sure that only relevant information is shared to the user, actionable information, and that you have a better picture about the life cycle of the order. And the nice way to see that is the fact that you can configure a business process flow like the one I have here, that where essentially you build the stages of your order cycle in a visual manner, and each one of these stages might have entry and exit criteria that you can configure, and you can put business logic around that and configure specific functions and functionality that you wish to be executed every time one of these stages is initiated or completed. This gives you a better perspective about where you are in terms of the overall life cycle, because it's not simply a text status like we usually see in ERPs, like the 365 supply chain. So the order has, of course, all the main concepts you would imagine, header information about the customer we are dealing with, about the pricing rules and overall totals that compose this order, and also the shipping and billing information to make sure that from an actionable perspective, you have the data necessary to make decisions about what is the best place for me to fulfill this order from, and what's the best partner for me to deliver this to my end customer. At the end of the day, these are two of the biggest questions that IOM helps answer, okay? Of course, you have then your lines with your products. These products can be of different natures. We can manage bundles, we can manage simple products, or even write-in products, which are essentially category-driven lines. You also have an interesting concept of here, which if you are familiar with the customer engagement framework, you are aware of, which is the timeline, which essentially gives you a step-by-step about what happened to this order from the moment it was created to the moment it was fully closed, let's say. Typically, we use also this timeline to leave a trace about the different interactions we had with external systems. So if you are operating in a customer service department, you can use IOM to essentially provide good customer service, because this is a one-stop screen for what is happening to the order, what has been executed so far, and you can manage and communicate effectively with the customer based on what you can inquire on these screens, okay? So these orders are, of course, integrated here. They can be manually closed. So we have also situations where IOM is not being used, strictly speaking, as a fulfillment or an orchestration tool, but rather as a framework of actually creating, allowing call center structures to create and manage new sales orders. So indeed, you can create new sales orders manually from here and manage the process entirely in an independent manner in IOM, because like I said before, you can deploy IOM in a standalone fashion, okay? Of course, that if you connect IOM with F&O, with the 365 Finance and Operations, that's typically the dream for us that live under this Dynamics 365 environment. These orders will arrive to you in a much more natural way, because if you enable dual write, the standard connector that Microsoft built to connect D365 F&O to Dataverse, generically speaking, you can easily configure a couple of entities to bring that data from F&O to IOM in a seamless and incremental way without having to build any integration from scratch. That is not only applicable for orders, but actually for any other entity that you wish to synchronize between F&O and IOM, granted that both entities exist in the two applications, of course. This is particularly useful, for instance, to sync master data, like products, your product catalog, and your customer master records, okay? At least those would be, let's say, the basis for you to be able to manage orders in the solution. Now, an interesting thing here is that IOM manages orders, and the fulfillment of the order is centered in another entity, which IOM calls fulfillment orders. These are essentially structures that allows you to specify the shipment structure for a given order. So you might have a sales order with 2, 3, or 4 lines, and you might decide that you want to consolidate all those lines in a single shipment, or that you will have multiple shipments because you have different delivery dates or different delivery addresses. So for each one of those shipment plans, IOM will create for you a fulfillment order to give you an individual track of that shipment. Now, these fulfillment orders can be part of something greater, a fulfillment plan, which is essentially a grouping of all of these shipments to make sure that an order as a whole is fully delivered, okay? If you think about that, then you can think about all the cool scenarios you can build around it. You can specify rules to consolidate or not shipments. You can specify rules to split shipments. You can specify rules to have like distribution centers and consolidation structures to gather all the products before shipping out to the end customer. All those business rules are possible to be established in IOM. Now, these fulfillment orders are the result of, let's say, an engine that IOM has, where based on the flow that you configured, the system will identify where should I fulfill this order from. So what are the best warehouses, stores, or any storage locations where we have inventory that I should consider to provide me the most optimal flow for me to deliver an order to an end customer in the fastest, more efficient way, and the fastest usually is the criteria, but of course efficiently from both a logistics and a financial perspective to my end customer, okay? This might be driven by rules like where is the origin of my inventory and the destination of this shipment to make sure that you minimize the distance, the time, and the underlying cost about delivering goods to your customers. So you can make all sorts of rules about I want to ship within a county, within a district, within a city. I can specify what warehouses fulfill specific regions in the areas or countries where you operate. So all of those rules can be easily set up as IOM has plugins and features that allows you to have geographical calculations to make sure that distance is a key factor in deciding where do you ship from and how do you ship it, okay? So these fulfillment orders and fulfillment plans can also be used to serve as a basis for an integration to your logistics partners. So this is usually used as a shipment creation entity. So if you have 2, 3, or 4 fulfillment orders, you could use this to serve your delivery partners into scheduling a shipment, a pickup of an order, and eventually the shipment itself. D365 IOM manages these orders, manage sales orders, but also manages reverse logistics. So if you want to manage also your sales returns, you are able to do so, as D365 IOM also does that. So typically the challenge in returns is a bit different. There is a scheduling complexity about defining with the client where and when should we arrange a pickup of goods that are requested to be returned. And the purpose of IOM is typically to allow you to manage that schedule and also to specify the best delivery partner to pick up those goods. And then in a second layer, where should this product be delivered to? If you have dedicated warehouses for returns, or if you wish to return to the original warehouse, this might mean also international transactions, especially if you do exports, of course. And IOM can help you creating and make sure you enforce rules about what do you do from management of these pickup requests to process a return. Okay, the same concept of fulfillment order is also applicable for return. We have a fulfillment return order, which is essentially a pickup instruction, typically to a delivery partner. Now, because this is an order management system, and sometimes orders are fulfilled by inventory that is physically available, but sometimes in inventory that is only yet ordered, Microsoft also introduced the concept of purchase and transfer orders. These are typically the source documents that allow you to manage ordered inventory, okay? Inventory not physically yet available, but that you expect to have to make sure you can have ATP calculations and a planning for inventory not yet available, but that is scheduled to be inbounded into the business, okay? I would not say that this serves as a complete solution to manage purchase orders and transfer orders, not by a long shot, but it's a good structure to give you perspective about inventory that is about to come. If you wish, of course, to synchronize these with your ERPs or with D365 supply chain, you have a direct visibility about the replenishment orders that you have in the business for a given product, okay? So purchase and transfer orders are here, and that gives you a bit of a picture about inventory that you are about to receive. Some more interesting things for you to be aware of, and we keep talking about inventory. D365 Intelligent Order Management expects or allows you to manage the inventory allocation and inventory reservation, and Microsoft has built on it the capability to interact with providers of that same inventory. One obvious candidate would be, again, D365 supply chain. And in that sense, Microsoft leveraged the microservice inventory visibility to connect F&O to IOM. This means that IOM, while it evaluates and orchestrates an order, can inquire in real time the inventory that you have, for instance, managed in D365 supply chain and make decisions based on that. And as this is all powered by the standard connector that Microsoft offers, it's an integration that you already have available, so you don't need to build nothing from scratch. Also, if you are already using inventory visibility to expose inventory to third-party applications, portals, or any other kinds of systems, you can simply configure IOM to also consume from that structure, and this way you have the same source of inventory levels to all the applications that revolve around your inventory management structure. So how does that, in terms of rules, and I keep telling you that, or I keep telling you that IOM allows you to orchestrate orders, how does that really work? So IOM has this concept of orchestration flows, where essentially you can specify what happens from the moment you receive an order until the moment its fulfillment is completed. An example that I can show you here on the screen is a simple order orchestration flow where you can specify the step-by-steps that you will execute for an order to be orchestrated and the shipment is fully executed. So as you can see, this is a visual structure, much similar to what you find in Power Automate. And this allows you to essentially, in a simple and visual manner, specify flows, create branches about the business logic you wish to execute, and define specific actions that you wish to for the IOM to deploy. So in this example, what we are seeing is, okay, the flow starts, and the flow starts because a specific action of a specific provider was captured, like order creation from Amazon, an example, okay? So the first thing we do when we receive that payload, that new order, would be to validate its data, both from the header and a line perspective. And if things go well, we have here a simple instruction to change the order status for something like accepted or validated, okay? Then we can execute an action that revolves about specific things that can happen in parallel. An email to the customer to confirm the order acceptance, fulfillment optimization, where we send the order to the IOM engine to identify what's the best fulfillment strategy for the order, and we can even update the order confirmation based on that. Of course, as a result of that, if you wish, you can also perform an action like reserve inventory, and each one of these nodes have a specific action type, a specific input and output. So this is very aligned with the low-code, no-code approach that you have in Power Platform to make sure that you can create these complex branching structures without having to heavily develop your solution, in case you were wondering of doing that, for instance, in your existing ERP. So after that soft reservation, we could potentially initiate the fulfillment through the different carriers we work with. So this can define, I can put here some basic rules about how do I define the best delivery partner. This might be based on the region which I operate or the nature of the product I am shipping, depending on the volume of it and the logistic conditions to actually transport it to the destination. All of those rules can be part of your exercise of defining what's the best shipping carrier for a given order. So you can specify those rules here and eventually go through the process in updating inventory and eventually even providing an instruction for your ERP to issue the sales invoice once the order is delivered or ready to be delivered. So this is a bit about the kind of flow you can execute, and then IOM will execute this flow every time a new order comes in. You can have different flows for different scenarios, and you can even have a specific orchestration rule for returns, because obviously they typically have a different approach as you are more interested in making sure you collect the right goods in the scheduled date and time in the right address, and that you return those goods to the warehouse where they belong. Okay, so this is also something that can be easily done. As we execute the business logic that is contained in each one of these nodes, you can specify policies, things like filters, specific rules you want to engage. This is where you can specify, like, when I want to evaluate my inventory, what warehouses should I consider? Are all the warehouses suitable for this particular order? Yes or no? This might depend, for instance, on the inventory level that you have in those warehouses. So those rules and those specific procedures that you want IOM to follow through don't need to be, technically speaking, coded. They can be configured as policies. And every time in the flow you want to execute something under a policy, you simply identify the policy there. And this way you have a level of autonomy in building and changing the rules without having to technically modify the solution, in this case, IOM. That's one of the beauty about dealing with a system like this. Now, some examples some other things which are important for you to be aware of. Like I said, this all begins with providers. Providers can generate data or can be parties that we interact with to share data with. These providers can be first party or third party, like I mentioned, and you have here some of the few that Microsoft ships with IOM, okay? So if you want to connect with Adobe Commerce or Amazon for order intake, this is something already available. You could initiate a process of configuring a given provider, and this would give you the ability to connect to an Amazon instance. Now, it's important to know that these providers were built under specific rules and assumptions. So you might want to connect to Amazon, yes, but not under the terms of this provider in specific. And that means that most likely you will have to build a custom provider like the one I have here to make sure that you not only connect to Amazon, but you connect under the assumptions that you need. Okay, I mean this from a technical standpoint, of course. Now, we have order intake providers that essentially are the source of new sales orders. We might also have providers that provide tax services, like when I receive an order, I want to call Avalara or any other to calculate based on the origin of my material, the kind of material I'm dealing with, and my destination, party, and address, what should be the tax associated with that transaction. So you can call a system like Avalara to calculate that tax and to revert it back to IOM, okay? You can also have delivery providers, of course, like FedEx, like Narvar, like Uber Freight. So a number of them are already available here. And again, you can create your own with your own rules, okay? In terms of fulfillment, you can also have some systems here. You should know at least Microsoft Finance and Operations. You have heard about it, I'm sure. But you can also connect, for instance, to SAP or other systems that you wish to connect to. And in that case, you will have to build your own provider. Okay. So these, of course, these are then installed, and based on that, you can start using and consuming the actions that they trigger. Okay. In this case, if you check here in the environment that I am working on, we have a provider which is Microsoft Finance and Operations, our beloved F&O, that gives me essentially new orders. So in the flow that I have prepared or that I usually do in this environment, orders are originally captured by F&O. Imagine they might come from the 365 Commerce by a point of sale, we don't know. And then orders are synced through dual write to IOM, and this is the provider that carries them over, okay? This provider will then kickstart a specific action, and the orchestration process flows. I also have here the inventory visibility, like I mentioned, which is essentially a provider that gives me a visibility about the on-hand inventory I might have in the 365, which is an interesting way of consuming in an out-of-the-box fashion that data. And you can even work on top of that data to create specific measures. So you can create safety buckets for inventory, thresholds, safety margins, and so on. So more things that are interesting for you to be aware of. Here in the settings stage, you can have all sorts of configuration about how IOM should operate. For instance, here in the inventory measures, which I was specifying about, you can state what data source do you work with to fill or to fulfill AOM in terms of inventory, okay? And you see here that I might have finance and operations, I might have inventory visibility, a point of sale, or any other, let's say, provider. Based on this, you can also specify measures that you wish to take, like what do I consider to be available inventory, physically available, order available, reserved, picked. All of those measures can be specified here, calculated, and mapped to the source system. So the two applications can connect and you have consistency across the decision-making process, okay? So besides that, you can specify, like I mentioned before, all the flows that you wish to execute, all the policies that you want to enforce, and many other settings. The solution is, I would say, relatively simple from a conceptual perspective, but sometimes from my experience, these configurations are a bit generic, a bit abstract. So it's important that you especially rely on demo data on your first experiences, so you understand the nature of the configuration and how Microsoft expects you to build your flows, okay? Like we said, we have a direct connection to Power BI as the solution is supported by several dashboards that rely on Power BI. The solution is directly connected to Microsoft Teams. This allows you to have a quick way to start engaging with your colleagues, with other departments, to make sure that while managing an order, you can have in-context communication. You can have email settings as IOM is capable of shooting emails to your end customer, to your partners, or to any other party that you specify. And this allows you to be to have here a central station, as let's say a control tower for all the aspects about your sales orders. It's important to say that D365 IOM is not a full ERP, of course, and because of that, most of the financial controls and features that you typically find in ERP, you don't find it here. So unless you, for instance, connect to a tax service or you receive that data straight from the source system, you don't have tax calculations in a very sophisticated fashion here. And the same applies for other advanced topics like pricing, where if you want a pricing engine to apply pricing to a given order, you should connect to those systems, okay? IOM is essentially a facilitator. It acts as a bridge. It connects your source of new sales orders to the partners that help you deliver those orders to your end customers. And in that sense, it's quite flexible and extendable because it's API driven, built on Dataverse with all the potential that gives to you, okay? So getting back here to the PowerPoint so we can talk about some additional aspects of this. So in terms of benefits, what I would say is IOM gives you much better visibility about where you are in terms of your sales order lifecycle. And this, of course, facilitates the objective to make sure you deliver in full, on time, and under the specified agreement with your customers. It allows you to optimize fulfillment. So if you ever work with distributed order management modules, DOM systems of any kind, you understand how crucial it is to make sure that, especially if you are a volume-driven organization, how important it is to define your fulfillment strategy and how impactful that can be both from an operations and a financial perspective. So those rules can be embedded in IOM for it to execute based on your policies. It also, because warehouses pop up, warehouses are closed, warehouses are sometimes consolidated, things change in your supply chain. It's easy that you use this. It's important that you use a system that it's easy to maintain and it's easy to adapt to your current needs. So in an ERP, there is an entire life cycle on how can we apply those changes. IOM gives you a much easier, let's say, front office structure to operate and to manage those rules. And that should be taken in consideration when evaluating your investments on these areas. It can connect to one or more than one ERP solutions. It can connect to legacy systems that you don't want to invest anymore. And it's a way for you to have a more sophisticated approach into the order management cycle without having to really replace those entire systems. Okay. At the end, I would say it enhances a lot the customer experience because you don't need to look around in multiple systems, in multiple applications to find out where your order is. Because if you connect it adequately to all of your partners, you will have a single screen with the full story of the order for you to tell your customer about. In terms of implementation and adoption, it's important to say that you can request a trial to be activated, and you have then a 30-day period to explore the solution with demo data. And then, of course, if you wish, you can initiate a more serious engagement by subscribing for a paid version. As a partner, and if we have partners here, you are entitled to some partner licenses, so you can explore the solution, work with it, and find the best fit for your customers. It's important to also be aware that if you have D365 F&O already deployed, and if you have already dual write enabled to a connected Dataverse environment, then the process of installing IOM is easier, but you can always connect the two regardless of where one starts or where the other starts. Like I said, IOM can live in a standalone mode, so you don't strictly need to connect it to F&O. But of course, if you have already F&O, it's a quick win to make sure you have a solution that syncs natively with the 365 F&O. In terms of licensing, it's important also for you to be aware of the rules of engagement here. So Microsoft licenses IOM based on transactional volume, okay? When you are subscribing D365 Supply Chain or D365 Commerce, you are automatically entitled to some volume, okay, per month, in this case, 1,000 order lines, which you can orchestrate under that license. And if you wish to actually use and deploy the solution and you deal with more than 1,000 order lines per month, then you can subscribe incremental packages of this same value, okay? So fairly simple, I would say. One thing you should not be forgetting is that IOM is a power app at the end of the day for all intents and purposes. So if you use it not only in an automated way, fully agnostic of users, but you want users to interact with it and to actually manage it, those users also need to be licensed to access the power app itself, okay? So we can have some questions and answers if you wish. And meanwhile, while we wait for any doubts you might have, I also would like to give you more of a personal feedback about what has been our personal experience, our professional experience in deploying the 365 IOM. Archiconsult is at this moment involved in several projects where we are deploying the solution. It's, in my perspective, a solution with great potential. It's interesting, it's eye candy, it works in a simple way that is easy to understand, and against some order management competition out there, it positions itself, I would say, in a good way. The way it provides visual information for you to make decisions, it's very, very interesting. You have these nice dashboards that give you great insights about how your performance is being executed on the different stages of sales orders. And it's indeed an interesting value proposition for your customer. So on the positive side, I would say it's easy to set up. It's easy to connect with D365 Finance and Operations through the wall, right? Microsoft has invested in improving this flow and making sure those data entities that support this data sync work adequately. Okay, so it has become much more fluid and much more plug and play, specifically with the latest updates that we got last December. So that allows you to have a quick deployment cycle, at least a proof of concept for you to evaluate if IOM suits your needs or not. It's also because it's built on Power Platform, you then have all the Azure layer around it to easily connect with your delivery partners through the different integration protocols and patterns that you consider most adequate and most fit to your needs. And from our experience, of course, the entire application lifecycle management cycle is much easier than what you would normally find in an ERP. Extension is relatively simple, I would say. And like any Power App, you have a level of control about what you can do in terms of business logic, which is interesting. About UI, you are bounded by the patterns that the model-driven applications force you into. But it's also important to state that if you wish, then more insightful dashboards or reports, you can always embed Power BI into the solution to make sure that it gives you all the KPIs and measures that you wish to control. So on that sense, it's an interesting solution. At the same time, you should be aware of that when Microsoft positions IOM, again, a niche market, it's usually a solution that has a level of interest which comparable to other big solutions is not comparable at all. And the level of investment that we are seeing in the solution, I would say, could be a bit more interesting. Okay, so Microsoft has big plans for the supply chain workstream as a whole, and IOM hopefully will be part of that group. Copilot is being deployed across these applications. It's also part of IOM as an assistant for now, but we hope to get it in a more actionable fashion under the new agent approach that Microsoft is promoting. So it's an interesting moment to see what will happen next. Also, because all of these rules are exposed in the Dataverse and in the configuration structures of IOM, it's fair to assume that once these agents become actionable about what they can do, they can perceive in a faster way order anomalies, optimization improvements, and really provide you an insightful strategy about how to fulfill your orders, which is not just simply based on parameters and criteria, but based, for instance, on historical transaction, what was historically the best route for a given order to be fulfilled, the best partner that works in specific conditions. We hope to see a bit of that brought into the solution to make sure that we get better and better automation and intelligence across the entire application. Now, some considerations also from a technical standpoint. Dual write is clearly the way to go. Building integrations end-to-end with F&O, I would not advise due to the, of course, the cost and the technical footprint about it. But you should be aware that for products, it's very interesting to consider it. For some seed data like warehouses, delivery methods, customers, and so on, it works very nicely. For sales orders themselves, you should always assess the level of control you want to have in these synchronizations. If you want specific business logic to be executed, both from an export from your ERP solution or the inbound of those orders in IOM. You should consider if do all right serve those purposes, if performance-wise it's capable of dealing with the volume that you are expecting, or if it's a better approach to actually build a custom integration pattern to deliver this data entity into IOM. We have been experiencing both approaches in the projects we are running, and there are considerations to be taken care of from an architecture perspective for you to find the best approach. As a starting point, do all right for sure. In a more advanced analysis, you should be open for other possibilities because they might give you much more flexibility and control over how data is synced and the monitoring controls you have about that synchronization process, okay? Some other interesting things you should be aware of is that some flows that we invoke in IOM, specifically the fulfillment engine, are native from IOM and they are closed plugins, which means that if you wish to extend them, in some situations you'll not be allowed to. So you'll have to process business logic before or after that engine executes its own function, but you cannot sometimes, for some of these standard flows, extend and further customize it. You should be aware of that. So make sure that when thinking about deploying IOM, you really make a good proof of concept about if it really meets your requirements, business and technical, and proceed carefully on that front to make sure that, of course, at the end of the day, all of the key requirements are met. Okay. From a performance perspective, Microsoft, of course, built IOM to be driven by volume because that's the nature of the solution. But at the same time, we know that the technical infrastructure you have below, built on Dataverse, can struggle with some specific scenarios, and you might have things like API limits. So you should really anticipate the volumes, the peak seasons, and what you are expected to throw at the application to make sure that not only it meets the business requirements, but from a technical standpoint, you are not creating a bottleneck in a structure that is not capable of enduring the volume of transactions that you need to deal with. So it's important, some important considerations. Of course, much more would probably be possible to say about IOM. But of course, our time is a bit limited. And in this sense, I just would like to share a bit of what has been my experience and insights about IOM. And in case you wish to clarify any doubts, either now or afterwards, I'm more than happy to connect with you and to make sure we can talk a bit about how can IOM better help you orchestrate and manage your entire order cycle. Mr. Raz, I'm sure you are happy that I just finished it exactly on time. So I made an effort to be.
You're a professional, a true professional, Luis, a true professional. You're highly experienced, not just in intelligent order management, I have to say. So you've shared obviously your real world experiences of a very, as you described, a niche product within a very specialized area. And you really have shared and opened up the world of intelligent order management, I have to say, Luis, because a lot of people haven't used this in this space. And so you're one of the few who have. And so I just want to thank you for sharing your experience here. I think everyone's been quiet, just listening to you and learning from you. So
I brought them to death, probably.
Yeah. And it was very well explained, very excellently delivered. So we just want to thank you, Luis, for taking some time off your busy schedule to share your knowledge around intelligent order management and driving productivity and intelligence, moving away from the traditional approaches to more intelligent and automated approaches and using more foresight in planning. So a huge thank you to you, Lewis. Lewis, don't forget to share your contact details in the chat so that the community can keep in touch with you, because the supply chain community dynamics is actually, it's a very small community, and so it's important for the community to keep up to date with any news and updates related to supply chain. So yeah, feel free to share your connection details in the chat as we move on to our next session. So without further ado, Lewis, I want to say huge thanks to you again for joining us from beautiful Portugal, Porto, and we hope to see you soon.
Well, it was a pleasure on my side, and it's always an honor to contribute to this great community. And as always, I am available to contribute. So please don't be shy, reach out. I just shared my contacts in the chat, and I'm very happy to be part of this initiative. And congratulations to you, Raz, and to the entire Power community, because these initiatives are really great to foster our beloved community. Thank you, and carry on. Good luck.
Thank you, Lewis. So Lewis, Mariano is obviously online, and we'll be introducing our next speakers. It's a Dynamics duo. The Dynamics 365 supply chain duo is joining us today. So we have
a stellar duo.
Sorry, Mariano?
A stellar duo.
A duo, correct? Yes. Yes, so we've got Drew. So we've got our special Microsoft MVP in supply chain, Drew, as well as Christian. So Drew's joining us all the way from the USA. Hello there, Drew.
Raz, how are you?
Hey, Drew, fantastic, excellent. We finally managed to get hold of Drew, Mariano. We've been trying to get hold of Drew, and now finally we've got hold of Drew to really be part of this, because Drew's a big Lego fan as well, right, Drew? So so it's great to finally have you here to be, into the world of Lego, so you can also be part of that experience. So
I was going to wear these, but it made it really hard to see my laptop while I'm doing my presentation. So maybe I'll save these for the
my
questions.
word! Look at that! Look at that! Well, I've never seen Lego shades before.
We got Lego shades. We got Lego coffee. We're going the whole way, Raz.
Oh my! Okay, this is getting real. This is getting absolutely real now, guys. Okay, we're not playing around here. We're really, really committed to going the whole distance with this. So we've got Drew, we got Christian. They're both online.
Christian, it seems, yeah.
So,
Christian, are you there?
I'm here. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
awesome.
sir.
Oh, there you go. Love your glasses. Ready to rumble. Drew, do you want to get us kicked off, or should I get us
think
kicked
Raz, Mariano is, going to do some introductions. I was just making sure you were here before we kicked off. Mariano, back to you.
Yeah, so you see in both with the shades and all the Lego stuff. So let's give it up for Andrew and Christian, who will be talking about demand planning, one hot topic over the last year. So both of them are really experienced MVPs. A lot of years doing conference and chat. So let's give it up for them. Back to you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Christian, looks like you're sharing your screen there.
Yes. I can get us kicked off if you want, Drew.
Why don't you introduce yourself? Why don't we skip to that presenter slide and you can introduce yourself.
Okay, awesome. First, welcome everybody, and to stay in alignment with the Lego scheme. And we're talking about the building blocks, so to speak, of demand planning today. Introducing myself, Chris Degrado. I'm leading the supply chain management, manufacturing, mixed reality practices as Mazars, former Mazars now actually, and also Microsoft MVP and AI ERP and mixed reality. And I think, Drew, we tried for a couple of years to do something together, so that's the first time. I'm buzzing for the joint session. Excited.
It has been a while. It's probably because, as this picture depicts, Christian is what's widely known as probably the nicest person in the dynamics industry. I'm a bit of the dark side, so that's why we have Veda representing me. We're merging the two, I think, together in this demand planning session. It's awesome to spend some time with you and get a chance to present this topic to the community with you, Chris. So. For those who don't know me, my name is Drew Lensack. I'm a director of delivery here at Argano. I've been in the dynamic space about 16 years. Actually got my start as a planner myself for a manufacturing facility in the UK. So started off on the end user side, like hopefully many of you here on this call, and then I've been in consulting now about 13 years or so. I don't have the dual MVP like Chris, so he's going to be the real star of the show, I think.
Well, my interpretation is because you're the demand planning guru, you're the, Darth Vader. That was kind of my interpretation, but I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that. Awesome. All right, jumping right into it. Drew myself prepared a presentation and a demo for you today. We'll talk about agenda in a second, but what we really want to get out of today for you, if you check those 3 boxes, I think Drew and myself are happy, and you get some value out of that session. First, we want you to get an overview of the end-to-end process in demand planning, and that changed a little bit. If you're familiar with how demand planning has been executed in the past or in previous versions, so there is a bit of a change here. So understands how the demand planning app also fits into Dynamics 365 supply chain management from an architectural standpoint. So that is the learning objective number 1. Secondly, Drew and myself will highlight some of our favorite key features, I would say, so you can assess the business value if you're a client, and see what value it can bring to your organization, to your business processes. And if you're on the consultant side, it hopefully also helps you to position it for your clients and gives you that angle as well. And last but not least, we want to highlight that, demand planning itself is all around collaboration, right? And that collaborative nature of demand planning, we want to highlight here and show how it's truly an integrated solution with teams, with F&O, with Copilot and others. And I know that Drew has some exciting things to share there later on, just to keep the suspense up early on. Anything you want to add here, Drew?
Yeah, I would say, I heard Raz in one of the earlier sessions, I believe it was before Juan Bravo, saying we have a lot of people here who might be new to D365 and some of these technologies. I think Juan did a great job of showing where the procure to pay features are and where that landscape is. This demand planning app, it does sit outside of the ERP, but it is fully integrated. So it fits well within the master planning, demand forecasting path. But we'll point out, I think from an integration standpoint, from a solution standpoint, what that means. But consider this a part of your full S&OP process. This is one of the tools in the tool set to use with Microsoft.
Very, very, very good explanation. Yep. And we'll see some architectural diagrams in a second where it's sitting, right? It looks like a cherry in the cake, so built on top of it. And with cake, meaning the Dynamics 365 solution, but it is a truly integrated experience, as we will show you today. All right, from an agenda perspective, first I will talk you through the end-to-end process, and that's the foundation, the foundational building block of what's to come. Afterwards, Drew and myself will highlight certain features, functions, that we consider as impactful and interesting to you from a consulting, or even if you're an end user, also as an end user, of course. Then we get to the fun part. Drew has a couple of demos prepared, and we'll actually show you that application. So we play around with it and show you through some processes in the application directly. And we have also some time reserved for Q&A and So please don't be shy with Drew or myself. Ask away. All right. Before we get started, and I know Drew has the the sexier part of the demo later on, but it's important to talk about first a bit theoretical where demand planning is sitting. What is demand planning, right? Because folks may have different thoughts or ideas what it actually is and where it's sitting. If you think about it, actually, let me do this, and I may break the Teams meeting here. I haven't done it with that audience, but who from the audience has worked with demand planning, the new demand planning app so far? If you can maybe raise your hand, throw a reaction,
hand, right?
Raise the hand if it's
Right,
possible. Yeah, I see a couple coming through. Oh, double hand from Alan. Great, love that. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that's good to know. Also to where to pick up. But I see also a couple hands that are not raised. So I want to make sure we are picking up the whole audience here. And if you think about demand planning, what comes to your mind is probably forecasting, predicting future customer demand, historical data, based on market trends or statistical models. That may be one angle. Others may perceive it also as collaboration, right? Meaning different departments, different players in the business, different business functions working together to come up with your future demand and planning around your business for the next fiscal year from a stocking perspective. Inventory management has close ties to it, right? Supply chain management coordination. That's another angle that what you can potentially think about when thinking about or talking about demand planning. And I would say that all of the above are accurate, right? And to tackle exactly those three business problems that I just mentioned: collaboration, forecasting, and supply chain coordination, Microsoft actually released that new demand planning app or feature or solution, however you want to call it. I think it was 2023, if I'm not mistaken, about 2 years, if my time clock is still correct. But if you have been on the Microsoft platform, or if you have been in a channel for a while, there were previous demand planning features, functions. So you probably, if you're part of that time, you probably remember Azure components that need to be set up, like machine learning workspaces, storage accounts, pipelines. It was quite cumbersome in maintenance, usage, in both of that. So with Microsoft introducing that new demand planning app, I think it opened the door for more organizations to embed it, actually use it, so that the usability got more user-friendly. And it opened the door for demand planners that maybe not too technical versed, that might be not data scientists, to add value on the planning side. And I believe I put a quote down. The Microsoft doc states something along those lines: demand planning in Dynamics 365 supply chain management is a collaborative, low-code, no-code demand planning solution that empowers organizations to build an agile and resilient demand planning practice that fuels intelligence and collaboration. Again, picking up the three schemes that I mentioned initially. I think it was a great suggestion, Drew. I don't know how your feel is, but there was a lot of excitement around the new demand planning app, and a lot of customers moved over, explored it, did POCs, implemented it. But yeah, that's a short intro. Let's jump into the process and look behind the curtains. All right. What you can see here is essentially very simplified the process of demand planning in Dynamics 365 supply chain management. And it's purposely a circle, because demand planning is not a task that you do once. It is a continuous task that your business probably has embedded as a business function. And if I want to be very simplistic, demand planning itself starts with importing data from Dynamics 365 supply chain management to demand planning, what's sitting on Dataverse. Drew mentioned it initially, right? So you import specific data elements like warehouses, customers, customer groups, your historic sales information, production information, and so on. And now we have everything in the demand planning app, right? But it's still kind of unstructured. And we still want to map relationships because we want to zoom in and zoom out later on. For example, we want to see the demand by customer group, by warehouse, by site, by product. So maybe very granular, or maybe you want to zoom out. So we need to define those relationships. And I will jump back and forth between that slide now and the environment, just to highlight some of the features, functions. We talked first about the import template here, as well as tables and relationships. All right. So what you can see here is the demand planning app itself, right? And as I said, the process starts actually with, well, first defining your tables and the data that we need. For example, here we have sites, products, warehouses, pricing, coupons, historical demand. And those are the tables that we have here in Dataverse. And we can also see what columns we have, right? What information we are tracking. But most importantly, we can also specify, and we're quite flexible here in how we are creating the relationships, right? Here we are tying the historical demand to other tables like the customer, the warehouse, the product, the legal entity tables, and so to speak, are flexible in how we design later on, how we can, aggregate and disaggregate in a way. Very important.
And Chris, course, if I don't mind stepping in,
please.
One of the reasons this is important, I think, for a lot of the people on the call to take note of, if you're not understanding what Chris is showing here, is this is a tool not just for users who already have D365 supply chain management. You have other ERPs, you have other CRM order taking systems. As he pointed out in that one slide that he's going to jump back and forth with, we can take data from those systems and use this as a tool. So much like IOM and some of the other functionality shown today in earlier sessions, this isn't just a dynamics play. This is a much broader approach to forecasting and your overall S&OP.
Love the comment, and absolutely correct. I mean, if you're an end user and your organization is a Microsoft shop, great, that's a cherry in the cake, right? But if you are, on different systems, or your information is sitting in a data lake, or what it might be, you're not running Dynamics 365. This still can be a play for you, so to speak. It's a bit more agnostic. An option that's the one we're showing today, is of course hooking it up as a cherry on the cake to your Dynamics 365 instance. Very good point. Thanks, Drew. Yeah, I mean, either way, here you can see the tables, you can specify the relationships, you see the columns, and that's the data that I imported already, right? But how do I actually get data from Dynamics 365 to the demand planning app? This is actually done via import templates, right? So here I have two import templates set up. If I'm going into the details here, I can see I'm the owner, so I set it up. We use the F&O connector, so I specify my URL, means my environment, my Dynamics 365 base URL, and this is where I'm at the moment getting data from, as soon as I kicked it off manually. But I could also schedule that, right? And again, I mentioned demand planning is a continuous task. It is not just a one-time execution. So we can have a rolling forecast. We double click on that later and do it by a schedule. And I can also specify, of course, which data I want to fetch. What's the source? And it's referencing Dynamics 365 entity here. And what's the target here on my demand planning site? So you can see that, right? And last but not least, I can see, of course, the jobs that have been executed successfully or not. And now you may wonder, how do you know if it was successful? Yes, you can see it here on the demand planning site, what it did, how many records it imported, and so on. But also on the Dynamics 365 side, you can see that as soon as I trigger it, it actually created a project here for an export, right? So it exported my legal entities from Dynamics 365. It exported my customer accounts. It exported the sites, the warehouses, the variants, and so on. So you can see it on both sides of the coin what it actually did. All right, going back, that was the import data piece. Again, important. Map your tables, your fields, based on your business scenario, and set up the import templates and run it either manually or in a schedule. But now you have all the data sitting there in Dynamics in the demand planning app, but it's somewhat, it's a data dump, it's messy, it doesn't have relation to time series, so to speak. What we want to do is we want to organize that raw data that we just imported and organize it in a way that makes sense for our business, right? Meaning we want to use the data and put it or turn it into time series data for trending, seasonality, decomposition, and so on. So how do we do that? We do that via transformation profiles. Let me go back to the app here. You can see I created a transformation template, and what it's literally doing, you specify, again, I can specify a category where the results should be posted to. Here I just use miscellaneous, but I could also use demand. I say, hey, please do it in monthly buckets or in weekly buckets or in daily buckets. What makes sense for my business? And also the precision. Maybe you want to do it in hundreds or again in the smaller precision. I can set it up here. I can also specify what field should I use as a timestamp to bucket the raw data into, for example, my monthly buckets here. It should use the actual delivery date, and the measure means the quantity should be my quantity from the historical demand table. And then I have all those dimensions that I mapped via the relationships, right? So I have my product ID, what's sitting on the historical demand table, but the product ID field is, so to speak, my primary key on the products table, what is a separate table, right? So you create those relationships initially that enables you zooming in, zooming out later. I can run a schedule. I don't have it set up here. I run it manually usually, and I can see the jobs that failed, but also completed, right? So I let a job fail the other day, so you can see, it's also sharing that. The result of this is, if I'm going to the time series here, you can see it is bucketing my data, and again, this controls the data, so might be not the most applicable, but it is bucketing in monthly buckets. All the data we got, and I'm going to this one here. You can see from this year there were a couple sales in May, last year a couple sales here in August. But what it did is it took the data and organized it in monthly buckets. That's pretty much what we're trying to do here. And it is the baseline later on for our forecast. So I'm going back to the PowerPoint. The next step is actually forecasting. So now that we have it organized, we have it ready, you can choose and model how your forecast should be done. Microsoft Demand Planning comes actually with 4 models out of the box. What is ARIMA, ETS, exponential smoothing, and profit. Based on seasonality, your business scenario, the product you're selling, and how the nature of your business, so to speak, you would choose either or. For example, if there's strong seasonality, you maybe would use ETS. If you have if you know that historic demand has an immediate impact on future demand, you maybe would use ARIMA. So based on those factors, you would choose either or. Now you probably wonder, what if I don't know? Microsoft has also a force model, what is a best fits model pretty much. So it runs through all the 3 and finds the one that's most applicable to your scenario. It takes a bit longer to run, but that option is also there. And then their organization where they say, hey, I'm special. I mean, you probably have heard that if you're a consultant, this is not how we're doing things. You probably have heard that. Here, there is an option that you can use your custom machine learning project as well that you can plug in. Okay, so let me show you how it looks like. The forecast profile here is on the left-hand side. And if I'm going through, for example, to my ARIMA forecast profile, again, I say, hey, I want to have monthly buckets forecasted based on my history. Precision should be here in 0.01, 12 buckets. I want to forecast for 12 buckets. And please put that output to the forecast planning data, please. Okay, so whatever when we're running this, the data that produced should be categorized in the forecast planning data. I can say, again, monthly, 12 buckets, and now we can specify, that looks very familiar to IUM, probably what you just saw very nicely a couple minutes ago. You can see an input, what is our output of the transformation data, right? Our organized, cleaned up data in time series. We use it as an input. We have the forecast model here, ARIMA, but I could choose, one of the other ones that I just mentioned, or plug in my custom one, and then produce an output. If you go here, there are a couple of other things that you can do. Signal is a nice one that is in preview, but here you can, for example, fetch weather data and enhance, so to speak, your forecasting algorithm, if that makes sense, and include also other data elements and combine them, so to speak. Or you can remove outliers. Or again, if you have your custom machine learning module project, you can use that custom here. Phase in and phase out, we come to it later. But you can see it's very easy, like low code, no code, drag and configurable. I don't have a schedule. Again, I could set up a schedule. At this point, I would run it manually. And you can see also the jobs that ran in the past. The output of the forecast after we ran it here, right, is a time series or like a future demand. And if I'm going here, you can see for March to February 2026, this is how my my future demand looks like based on the history that I plugged into that model, right? And I will not spend a lot of time here because Drew will, I don't want to steal the show and steal the thunder later, because Drew has really cool demos here. But this is the output that you can then, work with your team. You can overlay different forecasts if you want to, and run those what-ifs analysis and hopefully come to a consensus with your team. So again, I bucketed review in there too. I could probably put another bucket, but forecast and review is the third step. The last one is, like, Drew and myself sparred, about how the world is looking like in, the next 12 months. Hopefully we come to an agreement. And when we do, we still want to do and use the data, export it and fetch it in our master planning engine, right? How do we do that? Similar like the import template, here we're talking about an export template. And going in here, you can see that under export, I set up a template. This one. And you can see my base URL. Again, I use that F&O connector. If I want to export it in different formats like CSV or want to plug it somewhere else, there are other options. We'll get to that in a second. Again, I met my columns here. This is my data and demand planning, my source in that context, and I map it to the target Dynamics 365 entity. What is the forecast sales import entity? I can also specify, hey, just import it into, or just export to USMF, and please tie all that to that specific forecast model. And I can run. Again, you can see the jobs that happened, hopefully, and they were hopefully successful. And here there were 2 that failed. I have another export profile that I ran earlier this week for you. So we can actually review now how that looks in Dynamics 365. Before I do that, going back to that slide as I promised, now we exported our data from demand planning and it's sitting back in Dynamics 365. But how do I use it? Where does it sit? It's actually under the net requirements, and we can include it in our forecasts or master planning runs. I'll show that in a second here. So similar like what we did with that export, the export of Dynamics 365 to demand planning. The other way around is from demand planning, importing via that export template in demand planning. And you can see that import template in Dynamics 365, aka we imported here the forecast. So I'm going to the execution details. You can see the staging data. This was imported. Those products, that's the quantity that we require in the future for that specific warehouse. And if I'm just taking one example here, TO3, and let's maybe take a look at here, our July. Okay, we require, based on forecast, 8 for that specific product. If I'm going out to my released product and take a look at that, well, first I need to go to USMF. Go. and I go to my net requirements, you should see if I'm going to, I already ran the plan for us. You can see for 7.1, we require there's a forecast. We require for that specific item, there's a demand forecast for that specific date of 8. Again, similar, compliant with the import here, compliant to what demand planning spit out. And it says, hey, yeah, please purchase. There's a proposed planned purchase order, and we go to there in a second, and for that quantity. So if I'm going to my planned orders, you can see now if I'm filtering for that specific item. Oops, I spelled it. That there is an order. Hey, please order it on already in May. Why May? It's actually considering also, of course, the lead times. I mean, now in our standard master planning process. And again, the only thing that I did here, just to show you, and then I'll move on, is for that specific master plan, I included my forecast model, right? So that's how everything ties together. And said, please include the demand forecast in the planning cycle as soon as I run a master plan for that specific demand NP plan. Okay. Going back, that's the full circle, right? And again, it doesn't stop with 5, it goes back to 1, right? Because you're continuously importing new data, you're transforming it, you're forecasting, you're reviewing, you're exporting, you're using that to drive your operations. This is the very agile, flexible circle of demand planning, I would say. Here's one more slide, more technical for the technical audience, but I want to highlight that, and Drew already mentioned that, very important. While if you are already an F&O, great, this is a cherry on the cake, and you see how everything ties together, how you can plug into that process with the demand planning app. But if not, again, it is somewhat agnostic. You can also use other data sources like data lake, CSV, and so on. The output of that imported data is actually sitting in Dataverse. Again, important for the maybe the architect here or the technical audience. And it's sitting in a managed data lake, right? Also for performance reasons. You can plug in your machine learning project if you want. You still need an Azure storage account. And later on, you can export again to F&O if you want to, if you already have that as your ERP, or you can also use other export formats, so to speak. Anything else to add, Drew, here before I jump to the features?
No, maybe the only thing we haven't mentioned about the technical side of it is like a lot of the tools that sit outside of the ERP itself, it's much more of a Power App, right? So this will initially be deployed through Power Platform Admin Center, which I guess we haven't really represented in maybe some of the graphics, but for those admins and technical folks that would be responsible for this to know, that is where you deploy the solution from.
Very, very, very true. Good point. Good point. All right. Now that you hopefully understand the process and how it plugs into Dynamics 365 overall architecturally, but also from a process side, Drew and I want to spar a little bit about our favorite features and functions. And I think there's 3 schemes that or categories, I guess, for those features functions that we want to highlight. Number 1 is collaboration, visualization, and flexibility, right? And with collaboration, referring to multiple worksheets, right? Means if I'm leading Drew leads the US, I'm leading Germany, because, originally from Germany, that's why you hear the little accent. We want to get on a combined forecast. Guess what? We can have different working sheets working together, overlaying different forecasts. So that collaborative nature is much, much easier than it was before. There's an integration with Teams as well in the application that we may or may not show in a demo later on. There's versioning. Guess what? We can have different versions of a forecast and try to agree on with other business functions. We can comment. We can do comments at the header level or also at the cell level. Say, hey, Drew, I don't think that sounds right. Everyone loves Barcelona, and the Barcelona shirts they will spike because they're so good. You get the point. So collaboration is one scheme. The other scheme is visualization. where we can compare forecast, dynamically run the reports, or run forecasting itself as a process. You remember it was a circle. We can have some conditional formatting that, you know, throws you a red field in your face, or like an icon in case there's certain rules violated, or if there's something that you need to pay attention to. You can aggregate, disaggregate, again tying back to the relationships that we initially put in place. So you want to maybe have your forecast by site, warehouse, customer group, item, or you want to do it just by warehouse because you're opening a new store, or you want to do it by the variant level, so you can zoom in, zoom out ad hoc to facilitate that discussion. So it's not just a tool to visualize, but to visualize and to collaborate. Last but not least, you have flexibility. Again, agnostic. Drew stated it a couple of times. If you have F&O, great cherry on the cake, tastes even better. If you don't have it, it can still be a play for you or your customer. It supports different file formats in and out. It is scalable, extensible. It's sitting on Dataverse. Copilot is a topic that Drew will double click on, so stay tuned. So those are the three schemes I would say that are that you should mention to your customers, or if you are an end user, take into consideration when exploring demand planning. And it's the last slide. Promised, then the show is with Drew, and he has some exciting demos prepared for you. I know that. Few more features at a more tactical level that we want to highlight. One is rolling forecasts. As I mentioned, it is a continuous process. Demand planning is not just do it once and then don't revisit it. You want to if rolling forecast is something that your business requires, via the schedules that you can set up, you can continuously. And there's like a little graphic. You can continuously use the net new historic demand and include it in a new forecast cycle and so on. So you truly have a rolling forecast, a continuous process, and it's not just a one time and forget about it kind of business function. Also, phasing and phasing out. There was a newer feature initially not part of the core application, but was released shortly after. If you have new products, right? The new Barca shirt for the next season, right? And the demand will be the same or even higher because they're doing so good. But you don't have any historical product data for that specific product, right? So how do you phase in and phase out the old jersey versus the new? So you can set up certain rules here, phase in, phase out rules. You can see the rule type here, where you can say, hey, we expect, because we're driving a premium price strategy for the new Barca shirt, we assume that 40% of the historic demand of the existing product is accurate because we are pricing the new jersey very high. So we are pricing out some of our customers, but this is kind of what we are planning with. So you can set up for February to June that you want to use 40% of the historic demand of the existing product and use that for phasing in, so to speak, that new Barca shirt. Same applies for phasing out. If you're creating a new shop, for example, a Barca shop in Miami, and you would expect it's going as well from a sales perspective than in Barcelona itself, you could use the same mechanism for store rollouts, if that makes sense. Last but not least, aggregation, disaggregation. Sounds super simple, very impactful because it facilitates collaboration and a discussion and includes different business functions. You're not working off static data. You can zoom in, zoom out, and run what if scenarios and really drive that consensus amongst different business functions to hopefully come to a better output. And that was it for me, Drew. Thanks so much for the patience.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to steal the screen here and finish off kind of an overview of some of those features we mentioned that are so key for demand forecasting before we get back into demo. Is that showing all right for you, Chris, on the screen?
Yes, looks good.
Perfect. All right, so as Chris mentioned, we had those three major categories. Some of the sub functions in there that make this a really powerful tool are calculations. Not all your items are going to have the same history. Not all your items are going to be seasonal. Not all should be run through, a REMA and flattened out over the long term. You're going to have more complex needs typically as a business, especially if you're in manufacturing or high volume distribution. So demand planning lets you build as many calculation profiles as you need, tie those time series inputs, use models like the best fit model or profit, which is new for this demand planning app, replaces some of the tools that were used in the old Azure Machine Learning Service selection and the SQL Server Analysis Services solution that was in AX 2012. So being able to have a lot more powerful calculations that are predefined, generating new time series, having those batch jobs that Christian showed, so you can automate it and not force a user to do those export and import processes manually each forecast period is huge. The other functionality sets I would say that Microsoft really focused on is collaborative forecasting has always been a huge gap in the product. Previously, we couldn't generate forecasts. We could only consume them in master planning. Now we have tools like this to generate forecasts. And with Azure Machine Learning, the big problem was you generate that forecast within the Dynamics 365 UI. Christian wants to go and create his own forecast. He's overriding what you did. It was very useful for one planner at a time. It was not good if you have global forecasting, regional forecasting, multiple levels that needed to approvals. So a lot of these tools now are focused on full enterprise forecasting, having those multiple versions, integration with Teams Chat, actually having a Teams Chat app within the demand planning app, not going externally to it and pointing someone to the data they need to review. And then they can use tools like cell level comments. All of us use Excel. We probably put comments in documents all the time. We can now put comments not only within forecast sheets, but specific cells. So if I'm going in and editing for March because we expect a 20% promotion, and that's not obvious via the data, I can leverage some of those other feature sets to highlight why we're making changes. Another big way I can do this is conditional formatting. We want to make it very visual for the users. There's going to be thousands and thousands of rows of data when you're generating forecasts for a high volume company. So pointing out things like what are the months where we're rising 10% or more? What are the forecasts that were generated for less than the previous period? Or what are the slow movers? Conditional formatting allows us to apply some of those business rules so we can focus on the things that matter and not maybe some of the more stationary static data that isn't a concern for the business. All right, so now the obligatory Copilot call out. It's probably been all over this session. It's all over a lot of Microsoft sessions. Demand planning has its own Copilot tool set as well. A lot of it is focused on helping you do some sort of simple analysis. So we have three main things that are available right now within the demand planning app. You saw some of the icons when Christian was doing his demo. I'll point them out further. But they allow us to analyze demand plans with Copilot and right now, I think it still might only be available in English, but you can compare two periods at the same time. So I want to look at March 2004 compared to April 2004, see what the change was, understand why there were changes, or I want to see all of the biggest changes from this year to last year, this month to last month. That is the sort of thing Copilot's going to summarize for you, point out some of those big outliers, highlight what you should be looking at. They're going to be rolling out more scenarios and more tools with Copilot, but right now it is looking at those two periods or multiple periods, consecutive periods, analyzing why you've had huge jumps, why you've had huge fall offs, and seeing what your big focus areas are. I put together some screenshots of where Copilot shows up within the app, which will be more obvious in the demo I'm about to do. But anytime you hover over two data points, you're going to see the little Copilot icon, and it's going to give you some options. It's going to give you some clickable messages to say, show me the largest shifts from May to April. Show me the largest shifts from April to June, whatever it may be, right? And then it will have the summarized results based on you clicking that message. So here I can see the largest shifts between two periods for my entire forecast set. And then finally, as like a pop out, a sidecar experience, you can use Copilot if you are the person who is maybe responsible for managing these forecasts and data sets within the app itself. You want to understand how many forecast versions do we have out there? How many different time series profiles do we have out there? Looking at some of the underlying setup, Copilot can help you with that as well, and navigating just the tool and learning how to use it. So with that, I'm going to jump over to D365, into the demand planning app, and I'll kind of continue on where Christian showed some of the setups. So two real things we wanted to highlight. Christian ended with a phase in, phase out. This was a very manual process with previous solutions, and it is something anyone using a forecast tool needs. You're going to obsolete items. You're going to introduce new items, and they will not have history in the ERP, in the demand planning app, in your order management tool, but you still need to forecast them, whether that's using the history of another item or a made-up forecast based on industry knowledge. So phase in and phase out helps us with those more full product lifecycle scenarios. We're going to be bringing in a new item. We want to map this item to this old item and use that history and maybe tweak it a little bit, maybe massage it for something that makes sense. So for example, I can set up a group for a phase in rule where I can map different products between one another, and I can take historical dates for how I'm going to apply those forecasts and say what percentage of those forecasts I would apply, or what percentage of demand. So what I mean by that is this first line here is saying I'm taking the history for product D0001 and I'm applying it to my brand new product, Drew Brew. I am going to do that for 3 months because this is a new item. I'm not sure it's 100% the same. So I'm only applying 60% of the demand from D0001 to Drew Brew as I ramp up production. Then I get into later months. I'm actually going to take the full demand from D0001 to Drew Brew because I feel like it's going to obsolete or replace that old item by then. And we should have a full demand history. And then maybe we can start to actually phase down or adjust other months as well. So this works both ways, out and in. On the outside, you're going to be obsoleting items. You want to ramp down typically. You want to run inventory out. So you could actually set up different percentages to say, we are going to slowly ramp this item down, even if there is higher demand, because we're phasing it out. So a tool set that has been added over the past, 6 months or so, as Christian mentioned, the entire demand planning app, maybe it's been 2 years since this came out in preview. Phase in, phase out is one of the newer tools that is available, along with things like time fences, where we can actually set some extra filters on data that we bring into the app. Where I want to spend the rest of the time before we get to the Q&A, though, is in one of our timesheets, in one of our forecasts. Christian was showing some of these. If I open up a forecast that I have generated, one, I can right away see the little analyze your demand plan with Copilot preview message. If I hover over these data points, that's where I can actually see that icon start to pop up. But if I'm a planner, this is a lot, right? It's a very busy screen. It's great that I have this awesome graphic here, but I have all this data and I really need to figure it out. And I might not want to comb through every single item. So one of the features Christian mentioned, we can aggregate or disaggregate. Maybe I want to see all of the demand aggregated or summarized for an entire location. Very common in retail. We're going to look at the entire store demand, not necessarily by SKU. I can actually change the filters within my form, look at them dynamically. So now I can see the distribution center demand, store demand for 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as I click those, my report's going to dynamically update based on my data set. So I'm actually able to see that in real time. I don't have to bring that into Power BI or some other tool to get visualizations. I can make these changes right here. I could also go in and edit. So maybe we know that there is a target to sell 300,000 units out of this distribution center, and we want to apply that on and say we're actually going to edit the forecast that the system generated. I can edit that here at the aggregate level, at the distribution center, and it's going to proportionally push that down to all the SKUs that made up that aggregate forecast. So I don't have to manually go down to each forecast or each unit or each dimension. I can actually edit at any of those levels. I can do it at the warehouse. I can do it at the item and have the system proportionally push that back. And then I can save this. That change is going to be captured. So when it's in audibility standpoint, collaboration standpoint, why did Drew make that change? I can add in my comments. I can come up to the version history. It's going to say that Drew made this change at this time. I can look into what that change was. I can view comments at any time. If I want to go talk to Christian, I can open my Teams chat. It'll pop open my entire Teams, and I can point him right into this actual file and cell that I want him to review, rather than opening up Teams independently, copying and pasting links. So it's a really useful tool, collaboration-wise, visualization-wise. I might even want to take another forecast or historical data, drop that on top of this. I could do that. I don't have to look at them one at a time. So that is really the really powerful tool, is taking multiple data sets, putting them on top of each other. Building waterfall reports, building any sort of normal forecast standard reports. I'm going to add a different time series, this profit time series. And let's say I want that to be a different color. So I'll make that cornflower and grid formatting I'll leave alone for now, but I could add a rule. This is where I might want that conditional formatting. Show me all values over 2,000 each, or 2,000 demand, whatever that may be. I'll click apply. It's now going to drop that second data set right into this tool so we can actually compare them. If I want to export this data at any time, I could pop this out, export this into Excel. I could continue to edit, make and save changes. And once we're ready, that version is now there as an approved version that somebody could export, bring back into Dynamics, as Chris mentioned, and apply to the master planning process. So when we say demand planning, this is truly demand. We're going to take that demand and it's going to feed the larger S&OP process, which will segue nicely in about 9 or 10 minutes when Mariano shows us master planning. Demand planning, demand forecasts are one possible feed into a master plan process. So you can generate a supply plan. So you can generate what you need to produce, what you need to purchase, what you need to transfer. This tool could be built for raw material purchasing as well. When we say demand plan, doesn't have to be we're selling finished goods. This could be ingesting data about inventory usage for purchase components that you then want to push back to Dynamics or another tool as well for forecasting or scheduling. But it is primarily built fully integrated with D365 SEM. It does have its own license SKU, so it does not come out of the box with your D365 SEM license for those who are using D365 SEM now. But it also can be purchased if you're not using D365 SEM. Although it is paired with that, the licensing scheme is with that. Hopefully, as Christian and I showed from an architectural standpoint, we can map and import data from CSV, from Excel, from Data Lake. We can export back out to CSV. It doesn't have to be directly into D365 supply chain management. So there is a lot of capabilities. There's a lot of broad usage here with this tool compared to maybe previous solutions that we've shown in the D365 landscape. Just because we do have about 7 minutes left, I'll stop there on the demo, kind of do a recap maybe of what Christian and I talked about and open it up for some questions. So key takeaways: collaboration, visualization, flexibility. Those are the 3 themes we both really like, right? The integration with teams, cell level comments, versioning, flexibility and agility through that native integration, but also integration with other standard tools you're using, Excel, CSV, Data Lake, the full Microsoft stack, I would say. But also maybe you're on Business Central and you need a forecasting solution. This is a viable option for you to look at as well. So it is truly, I think, more flexible than the built-in solutions that we've had previously. It works great for exception-based planning. It has Copilot features like all the tools that are being built in now. And then lastly, while Christian and I really focused, I would say, on inventory planning, demand planning for that, This can be fully used for budgeting as well. There are financial worksheets. You can ingest the data along with sales prices so that you are looking at dollars, not just inventory quantities. We really wanted to focus today more on the supply chain management side, but this is not just a tool for supply chain. This can be a tool for your finance team and your administration team as they budget for future years and future periods. Christian, anything you want to add before maybe we open it up to the group?
No, I think that was good. I was just the only thing to be called out. I thought you called me out on the Barca shirt. That was probably the only takeaway from from the last hour. No, I think it was good. Any questions? Raz, you're on mute.
There is one question, guys, so I'll read it out. So the question is, would you discuss DDMRP, which is going to be mandatory with 0.43, and what's going to be deprecated? It is off topic.
So DDMRP is part of master planning and planning optimization. While that service doesn't run on like the same server your users are logged in D365, that actually is D365. DDMRP are planning features within planning optimization, more in line with maybe what Mariano will touch on later, not part of the demand planning app. I believe though that functionality is becoming fully available, but DDMRP is just part of master planning. So typically it means different coverage group types, different ways of setting up configurations. Doesn't mean your business has to necessarily use DDMRP, because it's actually technically it's a different way of planning than traditional legacy master planning, which is very date based and calendar based. DDMRP is much more priority based. So I think a lot of what Mariano will show, maybe you touch on planning optimization, DDMRP in the next session, not sure, but I think a lot of the standard MRP features and coverage groups that y'all are used to will still be there, even in 10.0.43.
And that's a great segue before we move on to the next section. So Drew and Christian, you know, you're a great duo, honestly. You need to keep this up. These dynamic duo supply chain sessions that you both do really works well. Really well understood. You both complement each other very well. So huge round of applause for, you know, everyone really enjoyed your session, to be honest. Very well informed, both technically and functionally. You kind of hit, you know, you hit all the dots really. So before you wrap up, Drew and Christian, so as part of this community initiative, we want to ensure that the attendees keep in touch with you. Obviously, they've attended your session today, but it's also for them to keep the relationship so that the learning never stops. So if you could kindly share your contact details, whether it's your LinkedIn or a blog, in the chat, so that the community and the attendees can keep in touch with you and stay up to date with all the updates and changes, because the product, this industry that we're in, it's a very large industry with many different specialisms, right? And you can't be a master of all of them. And obviously you've covered one of them today. And so it's important for the community to be to stay in touch and to stay relevant in terms of what's happening in this space. So thank you for sharing your contact details in the chat. I think there are a couple of questions coming through. Okay, let's see. It says, okay, so there is a question. Here we go. So the first question comes from Laura, who's asking, do you know if this tool can somehow be connected with intelligent cash flow tool in finance? Regarding the part you mentioned about adding prices to have financial forecast amounts.
I don't believe there's any connection directly to the cash flow tool. Sorry. I would say it takes, if you look at like standard forecasting in Dynamics normally, which is by inventory, what it shows is if I forecast 100,000 units, it takes that times the sales price and it says, here's your financial budget or your financial forecast. This is doing something similar. So it's going to still use a lot of the inventory demand to generate this financial forecast, but it's going to base it on the sales prices of the items in the system. So it's still using, I would say, a lot of what we saw in historical MRP and things like that for financial planning. It's not connected to that cash flow tool.
And Sebastian's been great. Has said mega cool session. Thank you both. And Usman is saying, do you have to be educated in supply chain to work with supply chain in Dynamics 365? So would you like to share your thoughts, both Christian and Drew?
Christian, why don't you go? I've been taking a lot of questions.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, again, of course, it's good to have that background to, you know, implement, you know, a good, sound business process, right? Again, today we touched on the demand planning piece only, but this is, as I said, the cherry to the cake. So if you know how to bake the cake, it's that's kind of an ingredient to add the cherry, right? This is more an advanced feature, so probably also well placed in the time here towards the end. So yeah, I would educate educate myself more on the base application first if I'm not familiar with SCM.
Excellent. Well, you've both been fantastic. It's been a huge pleasure to have you both today, and we look forward to seeing you soon. So thanks for sharing your contact details, and you've provided a great segue for our final session with Mariano. So once again, huge round of applause for Drew and for Christian, who joined us all the way from USA. Please connect with them and stay in touch, and hopefully we will see you again very soon.